the other night. Well, she was at the same table, so I can't say she wasn't my guest. I was a guest. We were both guests at a dinner party in California, and she had just gotten back from the palace. And I think I didn't talk to her really more than to say a couple words, but I know she was talking about it. It's hard to then transition to a princess, and then from a princess into a homemaking guru on a television show. It doesn't sort of follow. So go for.
Martha Stewart exposes what Meghan said about King Charles' private Highgrove meeting. This is as delicious as a bowl of Martha Stewart's one-pot pasta, and honestly, the timing couldn't be more lethal. The lifestyle genius herself has just scored the ultimate revenge on Meghan Markle, brutally exposing her, ironically, through the Sussex's favourite soft landing propaganda organ, People magazine, as a big fat gossip who broke every single private agreement Prince Harry made with King Charles. Think about the sheer audacity here. Martha Stewart, who is well into her 80s, has officially reached the point in life where she simply does not give a single care. She didn't launch a massive statement through a publicist. She didn't sit down for a 3-part Netflix docuseries to cry about her feelings. She sat at a posh dinner table in California, looked at the Duchess of Sussex, and then calmly set the entire truth out on the table for the world to see. While Meghan spent days pretending she hadn't noticed, the rest of the world caught the signal loud and clear. This wasn't just a casual celebrity interaction, this was a calculated warning shot fired straight from Highgrove to Montecito. Did Meghan really?
There's been 3 meetings with the king. And I know for a fact on the first meeting, because I wrote about it, is that when Harry came down, they made up an appointment so that the king could be interrupted. So that someone came in and said, "Oh, you've got your procedure, sir." He never had a procedure. He just wanted to get off to Sandringham. So the first one wasn't exactly close. The second, they exchanged a few gifts. And it was only about.
I think she could walk out of a top secret reconciliation meeting with the King of England, fly across the Atlantic, and start blabbing over shrimp cocktail without anyone noticing. What did Martha actually hear? How did it end up on the front pages? And why is the royal family secretly laughing their way through the palace corridors right now? Let us be entirely honest about what we are looking at here, because the mechanics of this whole circus are far too glorious to ignore. We have the Duchess of Sussex, fresh off a private plane, stepping into an exclusive California dining room, holding what she clearly thought was the absolute golden ticket of Hollywood social currency. She had just returned from Highgrove House, the King's private residence in Gloucestershire, where a quiet, deeply delicate, and heavily guarded afternoon tea had taken place. This was the first time in over 4 long years that King Charles had laid eyes on his young grandchildren, Archie and Lilibet. It was a meeting arranged under conditions of absolute, Fort Knox-level secrecy. No cameras, no press releases, no royal commentators tipped off in advance, and a strict, explicit agreement between father and son that not a single word of what transpired inside those walls would ever leave the room. It was meant to be a private family moment, a rare crack in the bulletproof door of royal alienation. And what does Meghan Markle do the second she lands back on American soil? She gets dressed up, drives over to a lavish dinner party filled with power players, sits down at a table, and immediately begins to drop the king's name like it's a shiny new piece of costume jewelry. She couldn't help herself. The sheer temptation to remind a room full of wealthy, indifferent Californians that she still has direct, personal access to the reigning monarch of the United Kingdom was simply too overwhelming. She was blabbing. She was boasting. She was dropping hints, painting pictures, and making sure everyone within earshot knew that she had just been sipping tea with the sovereign. There was only one tiny, catastrophic flaw in her plan. Sitting right at that very same table was Martha Stewart. Now, if you know anything about Martha Stewart, you know 2 fundamental truths. First, Martha is 85 years old, worth hundreds of millions of dollars, has literally served federal prison time, and possesses an absolute zero-tolerance policy for social climbers and amateur posturers. Second, Martha Stewart is actually genuine friends with King Charles. She has met him in New York, she has attended his events, she respects the British monarchy, and she genuinely likes the man. So when Meghan Markle started dropping royal breadcrumbs across the tablecloth, she wasn't pitching to a room of wide-eyed, starstruck fans. She was sitting directly across from a woman who actually knows the man whose name was being used for clout. Martha didn't throw a scene. She didn't engage in a loud, tacky shouting match over the appetizer course. In fact, by her own admission, she barely spoke more than 2 words to Meghan the entire evening. She didn't need to. Martha sat back, listened to the noise traveling across the table, and calmly filed every single detail away in her mind. And then, with the surgical precision of an absolute master assassin, Martha Stewart went straight to People magazine, ironically, the exact same publication that the Sussexes have used as their primary public relations mouthpiece for the last 8 years, and casually spilled the entire tea set onto the carpet. When asked about her encounter with Meghan, Martha didn't hold back. She didn't wrap it in sweet, fake Hollywood pleasantries. She plainly told the outlet that she was at a dinner party where Meghan had just returned from the palace, and despite barely exchanging a word with her, it was abundantly clear to everyone in the room what Meghan was doing. She was talking about her meeting with the king. 2 sentences from Martha Stewart, delivered without raising her voice, without a long, dramatic statement issued through a publicist, completely blew the lid off Meghan's private royal narrative. She set the plate down in front of the entire world and let everyone see exactly what was on it. The reaction from Montecito has been a study in absolute panic disguised as silent dignity. For days, Meghan has been pretending she hasn't noticed the total evisceration of her social standing. But the damage is done, and it runs far deeper than just a bit of celebrity gossip. Because every single media outlet that tried to cover this scandal initially framed it as a typical Hollywood catfight. They called it the lifestyle queen versus the wannabe, 2 women fighting over an apron, handbags at dawn. But that narrative is lazy, comfortable, and completely wrong. It lets Meghan off far too lightly. This wasn't 2 rivals scrapping for attention. This was a direct, calculated warning shot fired by a friend of the crown, proving to the entire world that Meghan Markle simply cannot keep her mouth shut even when the emotional survival of her own family is on the line. To truly understand how deep this betrayal goes, you have to look at the mechanics of what actually happened at Highgrove House just weeks prior. King Charles is a man in his late 70s, dealing with serious health challenges, living on the other side of the world from his son and grandchildren. Despite everything that has been thrown at him, the Oprah interview, the 6-part Netflix series, the explosive tell-all memoir Spare, the endless leaks to favorable American journalists, Charles is still a father and a grandfather. When the opportunity arose for Harry and Meghan to bring the children over for a private visit, the king agreed. But he didn't do it blindly. He knew who he was dealing with. He knew the history. He knew that every single private family exchange over the last 6 years had somehow ended up in print with a heavy Sussex accent on it. So what did the king do? He arranged the Highgrove meeting in near total secrecy. It was kept so quiet that even Prince William and Princess Catherine were not informed it was taking place. The Waleses were down the road, playing polo and being photographed walking hand in hand, completely removed from the situation. That fact alone tells you everything you need to know about the massive gulf that still exists within the royal family. If this Highgrove tea party had been a genuine, all-hands-on-deck family reconciliation, William and Catherine would have been sitting at that table. But they weren't. They refused to participate in what they clearly viewed as a PR trap. King Charles, however, took a different approach. He agreed to the meeting, but he implemented strict protocol to protect himself. He brought in a chaperone. And not just any chaperone, he brought in Queen Camilla. Now, let's be entirely clear about why Camilla was sitting in that room. Harry completely slaughtered Camilla in his book. He painted her as the dangerous villain, the wicked stepmother, the woman who sacrificed him on her personal PR altar. Placing Camilla in the same room as Harry and Meghan was not a comfortable social choice, it was a tactical necessity. Royal commentators who have covered this family for 4 decades immediately called it out for what it was. Camilla wasn't just there to offer emotional support to her husband. She was there to be an official, indisputable witness. As veteran royal reporters pointed out, when you are dealing with individuals who have a habit of rewriting history the moment they step outside the gates, you must have a second pair of ears in the room to confirm every single sentence that was uttered. The palace famously coined the phrase "recollections may vary" after the Oprah interview, but at Highgrove, Queen Camilla was there to ensure that no recollections could possibly vary this time. She was there to make sure that if the conversation started drifting toward financial demands, security arrangements, or requests for official royal endorsements, there would be a firm, unshakable record of what was actually said. The King of England literally could not sit down for an hour to have tea with his own son, his daughter-in-law, and his own grandchildren in his private garden home without needing a designated witness present to prevent future character assassination. Think about the sheer sadness of that reality. A father forced to treat a visit from his own child like a legal deposition. And why? Because the palace already knew what happens to a private conversation the moment Meghan Markle has been in the room for it. They knew the clock was ticking before the details would be packaged, polished, and paraded through the Hollywood social circuit to boost a declining personal brand, and 4 weeks later, at a high society dinner table in California, Martha Stewart proved the king absolutely right. The mechanics of how this information traveled are nothing short of breathtaking. Consider the sheer audacity of the maneuver. You step into a crowded room filled with influential executives, media moguls, and cultural heavyweights. You know that your commercial appeal has been sliding downward for months. You know that your Netflix deal has been quietly downgraded, your streaming metrics are plummeting, and your attempts to launch a luxury lifestyle brand have met with snickers and supply chain disasters. So what is the only remaining card in your hand? Proximity to the British Crown. The very institution you spent 6 years publicly tearing down, calling racist, outdated, oppressive, and toxic, suddenly becomes the only life raft you have left to keep your name relevant in a room full of people who are rapidly losing interest. Meghan didn't walk into that dinner party to engage in quiet networking or to discuss her new business ventures. She walked into that room needing to remind everyone present that she is still connected to the highest corridors of global power. She brought up the king because without the king, she is simply another former cable television actress living in a massive mansion in Montecito, trying to figure out how to monetize dried flower petals and homemade jam. But in her haste to drop the ultimate name, she picked the single worst audience member imaginable. Martha Stewart didn't just hear the gossip, she saw right through the desperation behind it. When Martha spoke to People magazine, she wasn't engaging in petty celebrity chatter. She was delivering a masterclass in how real power operates. Martha didn't call Meghan names. She didn't launch an aggressive tirade. She simply stated the factual reality of what happened. Meghan had just returned from the palace, she was talking about it, and anyone with half a brain in that room could see what was going on. In 2 swift, unhurried sentences, Martha effectively signaled to the entire global media landscape that Meghan's claims of wanting privacy, dignity, and independence were nothing more than a carefully crafted illusion. What makes this exposure even more lethal is the specific outlet where it landed. For 8 solid years, People magazine has been the softest landing pad the Sussexes could possibly ask for. It has been the go-to publication for anonymous friends, glowing PR spreads, and carefully timed leaks whenever the couple needed to tilt the public narrative in their favor. It was the friendly shoulder they cried on and the reliable platform they used to counter every negative story coming out of London. For Martha Stewart to choose that exact magazine to expose Meghan's loose lips is a level of strategic irony that you couldn't write if you were crafting a Hollywood screenplay. She took the Sussexes' favorite weapon, turned it completely around, and fired it right back at Montecito. Immediately after the story broke, the damage control machinery tried to kick into high gear. Anonymous sources, widely believed to be connected directly to the Sussex camp, began floating counter-narratives to friendly journalists. One source claiming to have hosted the event rushed to declare that they sat right next to Meghan, and that Martha's account of the evening was simply untrue. But here is the cold, hard reality of Hollywood hierarchy. Nobody is going to believe an anonymous dinner host over Martha Stewart. You do not publicly call out an 85-year-old self-made billionaire who has survived prison, built a massive media empire, and commands universal respect across the entertainment industry, especially when everyone in that room knows Martha has zero reason to fabricate a story. When you look at the broader context of that week, the picture becomes even more damning. This dinner party didn't happen in a vacuum. It occurred during the exact same week as Meghan's 45th birthday, an event that was supposed to mark her grand, triumphant return to the top tier of American celebrity culture. Reports had already been circulating for months that Meghan was planning an over-the-top, star-studded blowout party to celebrate her milestone birthday. She envisioned a gathering that would rival her lavish New York baby shower or her fairy tale royal wedding. The guest list was supposed to be a who's who of global royalty and Hollywood royalty combined: Oprah Winfrey, Ellen DeGeneres, Serena Williams, Amal and George Clooney, the Kardashians, Gwyneth Paltrow. It was designed to send a loud, unambiguous message to the world: I don't need the British royal family because I am Hollywood royalty. Except reality intervened in the most humiliating way possible. As the date approached, the guest list completely collapsed. Industry insiders leaked that invitations were met with polite declines, sudden scheduling conflicts, and radio silence. The excitement surrounding the Sussex brand had simply evaporated. The A-listers who had happily lined up to attend her royal wedding 6 years ago were suddenly nowhere to be found. Relationships had cooled, the commercial sparkle had worn off, and major celebrities realized that associating too closely with Montecito carried a massive risk of alienating both the British crown and the broader public. So what did Meghan's big 45th birthday party actually look like? There was no star-studded gala. There were no red carpet arrivals. There were no glamour shots in Vanity Fair. Instead, Meghan was reduced to posting videos of herself dancing around her own kitchen with a fistful of balloons and her 2 dogs, while birthday wishes on social media trickled in from precisely 2 people. 2. And who were those 2 loyalists? Kelly Mkhitaryan and Tracy Robbins, women who are certainly lovely, but who hardly constitute the A-list Hollywood power grid Meghan so desperately craves. In fact, one of them happens to be married to a studio executive who owed the Sussexes a massive favor after they showed up to support his film premiere in Jamaica. Royal commentators and social observers jumped on the contrast with brutal efficiency. Lady Colin Campbell, known for her completely unmerciful breakdowns of Sussex PR stunts, pointed out that Meghan spent years acting like a relentless social climber, collecting high-profile scalps and luring massive stars to her orbit when she had the shining halo of the British monarchy behind her. But the moment that royal halo was removed, the moment the actual work of building a self-sustained cultural footprint began, those same celebrities quietly dumped her. From Rita Marley to the Prime Minister of Jamaica, from Gwyneth Paltrow to the Clooneys, the trail of Hollywood elite walking away from the Sussex brand is now impossible to deny. Even her own staff and business associates seemed to be feeling the strain. Reports emerged that employees at her company, American Riviera Orchard, the venture responsible for selling her limited edition jams and candles, were practically instructed to send their boss public birthday messages on social media to make it look like there was a groundswell of love and support. When your own staff has to be coaxed into wishing you a happy birthday online because no actual celebrities are stepping up to do it, you aren't living the Hollywood dream. You are watching a PR strategy collapse in real time. And this brings us right back to that fateful dinner table with Martha Stewart. Because when an individual finds themselves socially isolated, when their birthday party turns into a ghost town, and when their commercial ventures are stumbling out of the gate, the instinct to reach for past glory becomes overwhelming. Sitting at that dinner table, surrounded by people who were polite, but fundamentally uninterested, Meghan reached for the only weapon left in her arsenal. Her father-in-law, the King of England. She reached for the monarch's name, because it was the single remaining piece of armor she had left, entirely unaware that the woman sitting across from her was not just an unimpressed spectator, but a long-standing, personal friend of the very king she was using for social currency. To truly grasp the level of subtle, calculated destruction Martha Stewart delivered at that dinner party, you have to look closely at her choice of words. Read her statements to the press again, very carefully, and count how many times Martha Stewart uses the word Duchess. Not once. Not the Duchess of Sussex. Not Her Royal Highness. Not even a polite, offhand reference to the Duchess. Throughout her entire interview, Martha names her precisely twice, and both times she uses the exact same two words, Meghan Markle. That is no coincidence. Anyone who understands how Martha Stewart operates knows that nothing she says in public is an accident. She's a woman who has spent decades navigating the sharpest corners of media, publishing, and high society. By deliberately stripping away the royal title, Martha sent a crystal-clear signal to the rest of the American elite. She was declaring that outside the gates of the palace, behind the closed doors of real California power, that title carries zero weight. And Martha was not the only one making that statement that week. In the exact same 7-day window surrounding Meghan's 45th birthday, the British royal family did the exact same thing. On August 4th, the official social media channels for the royal family, which routinely post warm birthday wishes for distant cousins, minor working royals, and long-standing family members, maintained absolute, total silence. Prince William and Princess Catherine said nothing. King Charles and Queen Camilla said nothing. The official palace accounts, which can always find room to acknowledge a royal patron, or an anniversary, acted as if August 4th was just another quiet Tuesday in the summer calendar. Two vastly different powers, an iconic American self-made billionaire on one side of the Atlantic, and the British monarchy on the other, quietly, seamlessly, and simultaneously agreed to strip the prestige away from her name in the exact same week. Neither raised a voice. Neither issued an aggressive press statement. Both simply declined to play along. This coordinated wall of silence hits Meghan where it hurts most, because that royal title is not just a piece of ceremonial prestige. It is the literal foundation of her entire commercial enterprise. Brand Sussex does not run on groundbreaking innovation or unparalleled artistic genius. It runs on proximity to the crown. The title of Duchess is the sole reason a single jar of spread or a bundle of dried flowers can be priced at $40 instead of $4. Take the royal association away, remove the illusion of palace access, and what you are left with is just another lifestyle influencer in Southern California trying to sell overpriced home goods in an oversaturated market. Lady Colin Campbell summed it up with characteristic savagery, noting the immense hypocrisy of a woman who built a brand calling herself the Duchess of Sussex to sell consumer goods in America, despite having spent barely a handful of cumulative hours in the actual county of Sussex in her entire life. She discarded the country, discarded the duties, discarded the family, but clung to the trademarked name with an iron grip. And this brings us to the second part of Martha Stewart's masterclass in shade, her brutal assessment of Meghan's business capabilities. When asked about Meghan's transition into the lifestyle and cooking space, stepping directly into the territory Martha has ruled for over 4 decades, Martha didn't throw a tantrum. She didn't claim Meghan was stealing her ideas. She simply laid out a calm, logical assessment of the career path. She remarked that if you start as an actress, then transition into a princess, and then try to pivot from a princess into a homemaking guru on a television show, it doesn't sort of follow. 11 short words. It doesn't sort of follow. It was a polite, elegant way of telling the world that Meghan has no authentic experience, no foundational expertise, and no real background in what she is trying to sell. Martha was telegraphing to every consumer and industry executive watching that building a lifestyle empire isn't something you can just pretend to do because you hired a production crew and bought an expensive apron. It requires decades of work, authentic passion, and real skill, things that cannot be manufactured by a Hollywood talent agency overnight. This wasn't even the first time Martha had taken a swipe at Meghan's kitchen credentials. The tension between the two had been quietly building for over 2 years. Last year, when asked about Meghan, Martha offered a seemingly gentle comment that concealed a lethal edge. "I hope she knows what she's talking about," adding unprompted, "Authenticity to me is everything." She then immediately turned her attention to Gwyneth Paltrow, praising Paltrow's business acumen and Oscar-winning career to the skies, leaving Meghan entirely out of the conversation. Then came the famous recipe incident. When preview clips of Meghan's lifestyle project showed her cooking a one-pot pasta dish, as if it were a brand-new creation developed in her Montecito kitchen, eagle-eyed food critics immediately pointed out that the technique was virtually identical to Martha Stewart's famous one-pot pasta recipe published years prior. Martha didn't file a lawsuit. She didn't throw a public fit. She simply went onto her official website, updated the description of her original recipe, and added 5 simple words: the original and the best. Strike 1 was the authenticity warning. Strike 2 was the recipe claim. Strike 3 was the dinner party in California. 3 strikes, delivered over 2 years, without Martha Stewart ever having to raise her voice or drop her polite, dignified smile. As top media commentators noted, Martha was demonstrating supreme knife skills, and Meghan was the onion. When you look at the raw statistics behind Meghan's commercial ventures, Martha's assessment looks less like an insult and more like an accurate autopsy. Meghan's Netflix programming saw its critic scores plunge precipitously from its first series to its second, with viewership numbers dropping so low that her flagship lifestyle content failed to even break into Netflix's top 10 ranking during its launch week. A show sitting at the bottom of the top 10 list that week managed barely 2 million views, a threshold Meghan's content couldn't clear. Shortly after, the massive $100 million deal with the streaming giant was quietly restructured into a basic first-look arrangement, which in Hollywood terminology is the polite way of being shown the exit door. Meanwhile, her consumer product launches under the American Riviera Orchard label faced immediate logistical embarrassments. Limited edition jams were sent out to 50 hand-picked influencers, but when the general public tried to buy items, stock ran out in minutes due to tiny inventory levels. Customers who managed to order apricot spreads had their money refunded due to overselling, and reports circulated of decorative candles arriving at buyers' doorsteps with missing wicks. The tragic comedy of the whole situation reached its peak during her birthday week, when promotional content surfaced featuring commercial jam brands alongside her own. Industry insiders openly questioned why an executive producer would feature competing commercial spreads in her promotional materials, leading to widespread speculation that her company was so starved for operational capital that it had to take paid integration money from established food manufacturers just to keep the lights on. When you step back and look at the entire picture, the narrative that Meghan Markle built for herself over the last 6 years has completely fractured. She walked away from the British monarchy promising the world that she was going to be an international power player, an independent mogul who didn't need royal titles or palace connections to succeed. Yet 6 years later, her A-list Hollywood friends have quietly backed away, her commercial ventures are stumbling, her birthday parties are empty, and when she sits down at a dinner table in California surrounded by real industry titans, the only story she has left to tell is about the time she had tea with King Charles. She did not escape the institution, she simply proved to the entire world that without it,